What if the greatest conquerors in human history became victims of their own success? In the 13th century, the Mongol armies swept across Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe with terrifying speed. At its peak, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the borders of Europe. It covered nearly 24 million square kilometers and ruled over more than 100 million people. No empire seemed capable of stopping them. Yet, only a century after reaching their peak, the empire began to fracture. The descendants of Genghis Khan fought one another. Provinces broke away. Trade routes weakened. And eventually, the greatest empire on Earth disappeared. So what happened? How could an empire that conquered so much fail so quickly? The answer lies in 5 major problems that slowly tore the Mongol Empire apart from within. The empire was simply too large. The first problem was size. Conquering territory is one thing. Governing it is another. The Mongol Empire stretched across thousands of kilometers. Messages often took weeks or even months to travel between distant regions. Imagine trying to rule China, Persia, Russia, and Central Asia from a single government. Even with the Mongols' remarkable postal network, communication remained difficult. Different regions had different languages, religions, cultures, and economic systems. What worked in northern China didn't necessarily work in Persia. As the empire expanded, local governors gained more authority because the central government couldn't effectively oversee every corner of the empire. Over time, those regional leaders became increasingly independent. The empire was becoming too large for any single ruler to control. The succession problem. The second problem was leadership. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he left behind an enormous empire, but he also left behind many sons and grandsons. Unlike modern nations with clear systems of succession, the Mongols often struggled to determine who should inherit power. Every time a great Khan died, rival branches of the royal family competed for control. These disputes sometimes escalated into open warfare. Instead of focusing on expansion, Mongol leaders increasingly spent their energy fighting each other. One of the most important conflicts occurred after the death of Great Khan Minke in 1259. His brothers, Kublai and Arik-Boke, fought a civil war for the throne. Although Kublai eventually won, the damage was already done. The empire's unity had been shattered. Many regional rulers no longer felt obligated to follow a single central authority. The Mongol Empire was beginning to split apart. The empire divided into separate khanates. As internal conflicts increased, the empire gradually broke into 4 major sections. The first was the Yuan dynasty in China under Kublai Khan. The second was the Il Khanate in Persia. The third was the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. The fourth was the Golden Horde in Russia and Eastern Europe. Although these states were technically connected by a common Mongol heritage, they increasingly acted as independent kingdoms. Each pursued its own interests. They developed different political systems. Some rulers converted to Islam. Others adopted Chinese traditions. Some even fought wars against fellow Mongol states. The empire that once conquered nations together was now divided into competing powers. The unity that made Mongol expansion possible was disappearing. The end of constant conquest. The Mongol Empire was built on conquest. For generations, expansion provided wealth, resources, and prestige. Victorious armies returned home with treasure, livestock, and tribute from defeated enemies. But eventually, expansion slowed. The Mongols suffered several major defeats. In Japan, massive invasion fleets were destroyed by storms in 1274 and 1281. Historians later called these storms the divine winds, or kamikaze. In Southeast Asia, tropical jungles and unfamiliar terrain created serious challenges. In the Middle East, the Mongols suffered a major defeat at the Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260. For perhaps the first time, their seemingly unstoppable momentum was broken. Without constant victories and new sources of wealth, the empire became harder to maintain. The economic model that fueled expansion began to weaken. Cultural assimilation changed the Mongols. Another major factor was assimilation. The Mongols were originally nomadic warriors from the steppes. Their military success depended on mobility, horsemanship, and a highly disciplined way of life. But as Mongol rulers settled in cities and governed conquered populations, many adopted local customs. In China, Mongol elites increasingly embraced Chinese traditions. In Persia, many converted to Islam. Over generations, local identities became stronger than a shared Mongol identity. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It helped rulers govern their territories more effectively. But it weakened the cultural bonds that once united the empire. The descendants of Genghis Khan gradually became Chinese rulers, Persian rulers, and Central Asian rulers, rather than members of a single Mongol nation. The empire was losing the identity that had originally held it together.
Disease and economic instability. The Mongol Empire helped create one of the largest trade networks in history. Merchants could travel vast distances with unprecedented safety. This period is sometimes called the Pax Mongolica. Trade flourished across Eurasia. But increased connectivity also had unintended consequences. In the 14th century, the devastating plague known as the Black Death spread across trade routes connecting Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Millions died. Entire communities were wiped out. Economic activity collapsed in many regions. Governments lost tax revenue. Political instability increased. The empire's already weakened foundations became even more fragile. The crisis accelerated the fragmentation that was already underway.
So, the Mongol Empire did not collapse because of a single battle or a single enemy. Instead, it fell victim to a combination of challenges. It became too large to govern effectively. Succession disputes sparked civil wars. Regional rulers gained independence. Conquests slowed. Cultural assimilation weakened unity. And disease devastated populations and economies. Ironically, the same empire that connected much of the known world also created the conditions that helped spread one of history's deadliest pandemics. Yet, despite its collapse, the Mongol Empire changed the world forever. It reshaped trade routes, connected civilizations, accelerated cultural exchange, and influenced the development of countless nations. Its empire vanished, but its impact never did. And that may be the most remarkable legacy of all. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which empire you'd like us to explore next.